was secretly running the NCAA. Oh, also before his mom ran away with him and left, she stole $5 million from his dad. In the afterlife, stamping her feet and screaming because she said, I know I did not get to death and then drive for 8.5 hours for this mother 7.5 months after I pass away to all of a sudden decide that he just wants to be famous. This must have been the most stressful kid to have on the run with her, like when his mom was alive, because she was like, he's not smart, he's impulsive, he's bad at lying. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to keep us safe? Hello friends, this is Editing Nada. I just wanted to come in here with a quick PSA for you. Just up top, this is going to be a bit of a longer video, so it is perfect if you're doing chores around the house or you want to make yourself a little cup of tea, a little cocktail, mocktail, and put this on. But it is also important for me to come in with some trigger warnings. Basically, trigger for any ism that exists except like racism and colorism. I think Nora Sakavic decided that she didn't want to go there, and honestly, I respect her for it. Trigger warnings for later books in the series. There's depictions of SA, discussions of child, really of any kind, physical, mental, emotional, any kind of you can think of, it's featured in this book. There is some, I'm trying to be like careful with what I say because it's the beginning of the video, but just in general, if you have triggers that really make it hard for you to watch things that send you back to places that you don't want to be, this might not be the video for you. Maybe play it on mute. Don't skip those ads. No, I'm kidding. Or am I? Who knows? I'm gonna get back to editing. Just wanted to let you guys know that because I gotta keep my friends safe. I genuinely don't think I've ever been more excited to film a video. I'm literally just gonna get right into it. You know all the things. My name is Nada. If you want to subscribe, you know where the buttons are. I'm trying to get to 10K very soon. If you can help me with that, hit the subscribe button. If not, that's fine. Anyways, this is my favorite book series of the past, really probably couple of years. Okay, I am so excited today to be breaking down for you the Foxhole Court book 1. Okay, I was initially going to do this with like a pinboard thing, but then I was like, is that idea kind of like played out? I don't know. So instead I'm going to be fan casting all of the characters and putting up their pictures next to me whenever I'm talking about them. So we open up in a high school gym in Arizona. What city in Arizona? I don't know, because I don't remember. Teenager Neil Jostin has been sleeping in this gym for the better part of the school year. He came to the school after tragically losing his mother, which we will get into very soon. And despite himself, despite knowing better, despite understanding the dangers, he is drawn to his favorite sport of all time, Exie. He decides that he is going to join the high school Exie team at his new school in Arizona, where he is operating under the assumed name Neil Jostin. We don't know his real name yet. I also don't know if it's Jostin or Yostin. I'm going to be saying Jostin. And he's not the best player in the world, but he is good enough. So one day when he's getting ready to go to sleep, end his day in the gym, the coach of his high school's Exie team calls him into the office. One thing to note, again, is that Exie is the #1 NCAA sport at this time. So imagine like the football roster or the basketball roster of NCAA, right? You know, people make millions of dollars in March Madness through college sports, and Exie in this world is on that same level. I'm going to put up pictures and explain to you what Exie is very shortly, but please just stay with me for a little bit. So Neil is, like I said, living in the high school gym. His coach is kind of just letting it happen. His coach's name is Coach Rodriguez. He's just kind of letting it happen, pretending like he doesn't really notice that Neil lives there. But one day, Neil's clandestine homestead in the high school gym is interrupted by a visit from an NCAA level coach to recruit him. He is the coach for the worst team in the sport, the Palmetto State Foxes. Now, initially, I thought Palmetto State was going to be in Florida because I think there's a Palmetto, Florida. I don't know. I associate Florida with the word Palmetto, but Palmetto State is actually in South Carolina, and the team there sucks shit. But they have most recently recruited, and nobody really understands how this happened. They have most recently recruited the number 2 player in the sport, Kevin Day. Kevin had previously played for their rival team, the Edgar Allan Poe Ravens, based in Edgar Allan Poe University, which is in West Virginia. One day, he was in a horrible ski accident that completely destroyed his left hand, which was the hand that he played with. He took a break from the sport, moved to South Carolina, transferred to Palmetto State, and started playing for the Foxes with his right hand instead, because he just was like never able to use his left hand in the same way after his skiing accident. Think about when Kevin Durant left the Oklahoma City Thunder to join the Golden State Warriors. But think about that in reverse. The Golden State Warriors at the time that he left was the number 1 team in the NBA. And it had a powerhouse team. Draymond Green, I'm pretty sure. It was kind of like the 1990s, the dream team of the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, that white man whose name I can never quite remember, Dennis Rodman. Like, they all were on the same team. So Kevin Durant, who was playing like high above his level at Oklahoma City, but like wasn't supported by a team that had the same level of skill as he had, he jumped ship and went to the Golden State Warriors, and the next season he won his championship ring with the Golden State Warriors. That's all he really wanted. He wanted the championship ring. But people in Oklahoma hate him because he abandoned their team, because he knew he was not going to be able to get the championship ring with their team. Now think about if instead of him going to play for Golden State, which was the best team in the league, he went to play for a team like the Washington Wizards, which at the time and still, I don't know what curse is on the Washington Wizards. And I only know this because I'm from the DC area and my mom's team is the Wizards. But every year they fail miserably. But like, if he made the choice to go from Oklahoma City, which was like number 2 team at the time, to go to the Washington Wizards, everybody would have been like, now what are you doing? That's kind of what Kevin Day has done. Kevin Day has gone from the best team in this NCAA league to the worst team, and everyone is really confused. Kevin comes with the coach of the Palmetto State Foxes, Coach Wymack, and his little minion / bodyguard named Andrew Minyard. Now, when Andrew was first introduced, I was like, get this man away from my screen. I don't want him. I hate this little gremlin. He's disgusting. Because the first time you meet Andrew, Neil has been approached by Kevin and Coach Wymack, and Neil knows Kevin, but Kevin does not recognize Neil because Neil is in a disguise. So Neil looks at Kevin and Wymack. He's nervous that Kevin is going to recognize him, realizes that Kevin isn't going to do that. They give him their little spiel about Exie. He declines, and he goes into the locker room. And the first time you meet Andrew Minyard, he is swinging an Exie stick, which is basically just a lacrosse stick, into Neil's gut and knocking the wind out of him. Why? Because he is a chaos demon, and he just enjoys creating strife in the life of others. He swings a stick into Neil's gut and laughs. And Neil is like, what the fuck? That slows him down long enough for Kevin to be able to come into the locker room and have a conversation with Neil. Neil recognizes Kevin, like I said, but he also recognizes Andrew because he's seen Andrew on the NCAA, like TV shows, the streams, whatever it is, of Exie. Andrew is the goalkeeper for the Palmetto State Foxes, but he's also like Kevin's bodyguard, basically. He is Kevin's shadow. Wherever Kevin goes, Andrew is close on the heel or standing right at his elbow, making sure that nobody can enter his vicinity. And Neil is like, I don't really know what the going on between them, but that don't got nothing to do with me. I have to get these people away from me. Now, for facility of storytelling, I'm going to give you Neil's backstory now so that I'm not like leaving it to the last minute. And also so that you can kind of understand. This will like help you understand what's so compelling about this book. So know that you don't find out the full extent of this information until later. But for the sake of me and my like mental health and storytelling in this moment, I'm going to tell you the relevant parts of Neil's backstory right now. And also some relevant parts of Kevin's backstory right now. So when Neil was growing up, he was born to the daughter of an English crime syndicate and a man whose name I cannot remember. And it's irrelevant because he's a loser. But he was called the Butcher of Baltimore. That is Neil's father's nickname, the Butcher of Baltimore. He, as far as Neil knows, his father is a boss in the mob in Baltimore who is known for his facility with a knife, slicing people up, chopping up their bodies, and making sure that there's nothing left to find. Neil grows up in the abusive household that is run by his father, with his mother as like a victim of his father's and him as a victim of his father and his mother's abuse. Mother, the way that it's kind of explained is that his mother like beats him because she loves him, and also to like keep him in line and keep him docile to protect him from his father. And his father beats him because he's a cruel sadist and he just like enjoys seeing people in pain. When Neil is like 11, I think, his father makes a deal with another crime boss named Rico Moryama. So imagine this is like the Baltimore like Polish mob. Okay, the Polish mob in Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken, and the Japanese Yakuza. The Moryamas are the heads of the Yakuza, but it's almost like if the Yakuza, which is like, I think the Japanese mafia, was run by like a very well-recognized, well-respected family in like clean business, is also has a branch of it that is like deep in illegal mafia related business. So the Moryamas are bigwigs in Japan and they are getting a footing in the United States as Neil understands it. And Neil's father makes a deal with the Moryamas to basically sell Neil to them so that Neil can play on the Moryama's team, which is the Edgar Allan Poe Ravens, the team that Kevin has come from. It's like a Russian nesting doll, this story. So another layer of backstory. Imagine if the mafia was secretly running the NCAA. I think for a time they were like running baseball in the US. I don't know if that's correct, but like imagine if the mafia was secretly running the top team in NCAA basketball. That's what it would be like. So the Moryamas run the top team in NCAA Exie. And again, Exie is the number one sport in this world. That team is the Edgar Allan Poe Ravens. The way that they recruit members for the team is that different crime like lords in different parts of the world will basically give their children to the Moryamas as payment or as tribute or in return for something that they've done wrong, and they will give those children to the Moryamas, and the Moryamas will basically like test the child, and if the child passes the test, then they will be put on the Edgar Allan Poe Ravens team. But you have to have a very high skill of Exie to be able to pass the test. If the child fails the test, then they will be executed. So this is happening to like 10, 11, 12-year-olds. If I had been put through this test when I was that age, I would not be here. Okay. Not to say that my dad was a crime boss, but like if that had had anything to do with me, you would not be looking at me right now because I am not athletic in any way, shape, or form. But Neil had grown up obsessed with Exie. He was an Exie enthusiast. He knew the history of the sport, and he knew that Kevin Day's mother, I think, was one of the founders of the sport, along with one of the Moryama siblings. Tetsuji Moryama is like one of the deputies of the Moryama family. To make it as simple as possible, think of like the Toyota family that started the company Toyota. They have two sons. The oldest son gets to inherit the legitimate business, Toyota, the car company, and the younger son is put in charge of the illegitimate business, running the mob. That's basically the same thing with the Moryamas in this world. So Tetsuji Moryama is the younger son of this world's version of the Toyota family. Instead of being in charge of the business like his older brother is, instead of being in charge of like the legitimate business like his older brother is, he gets to kind of like run the underworld dealings of this family. So when he invents this sport in the 70s with Kevin's mom, he decides to incorporate it into the family's like underworld dealings. They're receiving these children, either killing them or putting them onto the Ravens Exie team. And the children are being drilled every day to be the best Exie players in the world. And they are. They are being abused. They're not eating properly. They spend all their time living, thinking, and breathing Exie because they don't exist for their own purpose anymore. They exist to pay off the debt that their families owe to the Moryamas. Kevin ends up being one of these children because his mom dies young. His mom, who helped invent Exie, dies young. So Kevin Day, one of the people who comes to recruit Neil, is on the Ravens team because Tetsuji takes him in and like enfolds him into this system of like farming children basically to join this team. And then, like I said, he got into a ski accident and he was like, they didn't want him anymore because he wasn't going to be able to play at the highest level the way that he used to be. So he left and went to go join the Foxes. The reason that Neil recognizes him, that's where I started. The reason that Neil recognizes him is because when he was 11, his dad decided that he was going to sell him to the Ravens. And so he was sent to the Ravens compound in West Virginia to do a trial day and see like what his skill for Exie was. And on that day, he met Kevin. So he meets Rico Moryama, who is the nephew of the founder of the sport and also the son of the head of the crime syndicate that is masquerading as a legitimate business. He meets Kevin Day, who is another son of one of the founders of Exie. They're all playing, they're doing their scrimmages or whatever. His mom knows what's at stake. His mom knows that either he passes this audition or he fails. And if he fails, he dies. He also that day like sees someone get murdered. Like Kevin, Rico, they're all in the room and his dad comes in and kills someone. So they are traumatized, of course, because they watched someone when they were 11, and his mom is like, this is the last straw. I gotta get him out of here. I'm not gambling my child's life based off of whether he can play a sport well enough or not. So Neil and his mom, who is British and whose name I can't remember, abscond in the night and escape from his father. And they spend the next 7 years on the run until his dad catches up with them. His dad's people, again, his dad is like in a mafia. His dad's people catch up with them in Seattle and they get into a shootout, and Neil's mom ends up getting fatally wounded. And then she somehow manages to drive hours into California, fatally wounded with multiple gunshots, and then parks the car on the beach in California and is like, don't ever forget me, Neil. That's not what she says, but it's just like, it's so melodramatic. And she ends up dying like in the driver's seat of this car, and Neil has to burn the car because he has to like get rid of any evidence of her existence and like his existence as well. And he like is crying on the beach while his mom burns in a car behind him. So melodramatic. I was in. Once I got to that, I was like, because I was raised on telenovelas, okay? Maria la del barrio, alright? Sin senos no hay paraíso, okay? Al diablo con los guapos, okay? I love melodrama. I love something crazy happening. Once I got to that part, I was like, I'm locked in. I'm going to be finishing this book. Maybe I won't finish the series, but I will be finishing this book. Things that are important to note about Neil's time on the run. He always slept with a gun under his pillow. He and his mom slept back to back. He started to have feelings for girls, but when his mom would notice him having a crush on a girl, she would beat him because she didn't want him to grow any attachments in any of the places that they were in. He lived in 22 cities over the course of 7 years. He lived abroad in Austria, Germany, Switzerland. Because of that, he can speak French and German as well as English. And growing up with a life on the run, he has become accustomed to being able to fit all of his possessions into a singular duffel bag. Oh, also before his mom ran away with him and left, she stole $5 million from his dad. And he still has some of that money with him for safekeeping and in case he has to go on the run wherever he ends up stopping after his mom passes away. I think his mom is dead for maybe like 7 months before he ends up getting recruited by the Exie team. And as the book goes on, now I want to say I'm not an advocate for child abuse. Okay. And I mean that very, very seriously. I've had some wine in my belly. I do not think that you should discipline your children by hitting them, because all that is going to instill in them is fear and anxiety about you. And their brains are not like built to process that type of interaction. You shouldn't discipline animals that way. It's just not good. That being said, as the book progresses, you begin to appreciate why his mother used to just slap him sometimes. Because the things that he does are so stupid and easily avoidable that it is absolutely baffling that he is still alive by the end of this series. At first I was like, oh, Mary, stop hitting him. Like, that's so bad. Why are you doing that? Why are you hitting him every time he has a crush on a girl? And then progressively for the rest of this book, I'm like, I wish his mom was here to smack him. But then that's a testament to how physical does not teach children. Because he was getting hit for 7 years. Not even, for 18 years of his life, and he did not learn a singular thing about keeping himself safe, keeping himself alive, keeping himself out of the spotlight, how to survive on the run. Nothing. Retained nothing. He's constantly thinking, I should be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that, and then never doing the thing that he knows that he should be doing. So he should never have even started playing Exie. But he just can't help himself. His mom never let him join a team at any of the other schools because bing, 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 red flag. What if he ends up getting recruited? And then Wymack and Kevin come to the school and he's like, this is everything that I've ever wanted in my life, but it's also everything that I was trained to avoid, because he has to stay under the radar. If he's anywhere visible, his dad's, even him being invisible with a fake name, he's changed the color of his hair, he's changed the color of his eyes. Even with him being invisible, his dad's people managed to find him and his mom in Seattle and his mom. So he's in extreme amounts of danger constantly. And any amount of attention is just going to ratchet the level of danger up for him. So him being recruited for a team that is going to play in a televised NCAA sport that is the top sport in the country, that is reported on in newspapers, on sports channels, on television, that's a bad idea. He should not join the Foxes. But the book series wouldn't exist if he didn't. So guess what? He does. I know Mary was rolling around in her grave. I know she was in the afterlife, stamping her feet and screaming because she said, I know I did not get to death and then drive for 8.5 hours for this mother 7.5 months after I pass away to all of a sudden decide that he just wants to be famous, playing an NCAA sport, be on TV, standing next to the second most famous sports player in this motherfucking sport, on a team that is notable in this sport because it is the worst. It's not even like it's a mid team. I guess you could say like USC in this world is like a mid team for Exie. They're not great. They're not the Ravens. They're not the Fox. Foxes. The two teams that people talk about, at this point especially, are the Ravens because they are the best, and the Foxes because despite being the worst, they have somehow managed to recruit Kevin Day, and he decides that he is going to join the team that everybody is looking at. Oh, okay. So you would think that this man has a death wish reading this book. I got to that point and I said, so you know you're not supposed to be seen by nobody, but you decided that you were going, oh, okay. Okay. So you want to die. That's what it is. Despite himself, despite his past, despite everything that he's been through, Neil still has this strong desire to play Exie, and he accepts the offer to play for the Palmetto State Foxes. He's thinking to himself, my entire life fits in a duffel bag. Like, I can get out whenever I have to get out, and I'm just going to go and try this because he doesn't really have anywhere to go after he graduates from high school. So he ends up graduating from high school and going straight to South Carolina from there. For the first few weeks that he's in South Carolina, he stays with Coach Wymack at Coach Wymack's apartment, staying with Wymack at the beginning of his time as a Fox because the dorms aren't open yet and most of the rest of the Fox team is not there yet. Like the kids who have families to go back to, they've gone back over the summer, and the ones who don't are staying on campus. So that's Kevin, Andrew Minyard, Andrew's twin brother, Aaron Minyard, and Nikki, who is Aaron and Andrew's cousin. Aaron and Andrew have some baggage with one another because Aaron and Andrew are twins and their mom had given them both up for adoption at birth, but then went back and only got one of them, and the one that she got was Aaron, and Andrew was put into the foster care system for the majority of his childhood. And then I think when he was 17 or when he had just turned 18, he reunited with his twin brother and with his mother. So Aaron and Andrew look exactly the same. He reunited with them, but he still calls Aaron's mom because she chose not to take him back when she had the opportunity to. And then 5 months after he reunited with them, she died in a car accident. And the rumor on the team is that Andrew killed her. Andrew engineered the car accident such that she would and he would not. And it was because he wanted to protect Aaron because their mom had been very abusive towards Aaron, and Andrew had told her either you stop this or I'm going to kill you, and she didn't stop. Killed her. This is the type of book that we're dealing with. While he's staying with Wymack, he is practicing Exie with Kevin and Andrew. He's running drills, and Andrew is really apprehensive about it because Andrew does not trust Neil whatsoever. He thinks he's weird. He's like, why is this guy here? Why is Kevin so obsessed with him? What are we doing? Because Andrew, knowing anything about Andrew, you know that his job is to protect Kevin from the Moryamas. Andrew is his bodyguard in some sense. We don't at the beginning of the story exactly know why or how he got to acquire this position in Kevin's life. It is important to Andrew that Kevin stay safe, and he thinks that Neil is a threat to Kevin's safety. So he is incredibly suspicious of Neil the entire first few weeks that he is with the Foxes. He's teasing him, he's making fun of him, he's asking him intrusive questions, and Neil is not answering anything, and he's being very cagey because like I said, he's a runaway who's not just running away from parents, he's running away from the mafia. During the time that Neil is staying with Wymack lets both him and Kevin know that the Moryamas have requested a district transfer for Edgar Allan Poe. So it's the way that sports have conferences, you have the Northeastern Conference and the Southeastern Conference. Because of where Edgar Allan University is, I think it's in West Virginia, it had always been in the Northern Conference, but they requested that year when Kevin transferred to Palmetto State, which is in the South, a transfer to the Southern Conference. And Wymack is I'm pretty sure it's going to get approved. We're going to have to be playing against them. I have to let you guys know. And both Kevin and Neil are freaking out. Kevin doesn't quite know why Neil is freaking out, but it could be because he's afraid to play against this top tier Exie team. They don't really know what's going on with him. But Kevin is freaking out because Kevin was tortured basically while he was a part of the Ravens. He was not sold to the Ravens the way that like everybody else who joins the team is. He ended up being taken in by them because his mom passed away, but like that didn't make it any better for him. So Wymack is like talking to Neil about Kevin's time with the Ravens, and he says Tetsuji never formally adopted Kevin. Do you know why? Moriyamas don't believe in outsiders or equals. Tetsuji took Kevin in and took over his training, but he also gave Kevin to Rico, literally. Kevin isn't human to them. He's a project. He's a pet. And it's Rico's name on his leash. The fact he ran away is a miracle. If Tetsuji called him tomorrow and told him to come, Kevin would. He knows what Tetsuji would do to him if he refused. He'd be too afraid to say no. So they're in a holding pattern right now because they can't quite figure out why the Ravens have not yet come for Kevin and told him to like come back. And learning that the Ravens might get transferred to the Southern District, that is kind of like, they're like, oh, instead of taking him back formally, they're going to play with him because he had the audacity to defy them. So Kevin deals with his trauma from the abuse by drinking straight vodka, like just taking straight vodka to the head. That's the only way that he can deal with it. By the 4th chapter, we learn that Kevin didn't injure his hand in a ski accident like everybody said that he did. We learn that Kevin's hand was actually broken by Rico Moryama for some perceived slight that Kevin had made towards him. It took nothing for Rico to break his hand and destroy his potential future playing Exie because Kevin was so good with his hand. They're like, this man is dangerous, but he's also kind of like volatile. We haven't met Rico yet, but he has a very tenuous relationship with his family, in part because he's so dangerous and like so hard to check, a difficult entity to control. Think about like, I think his name was Mr. White in Mr. Pink in Reservoir Dogs. Mr. Blonde from Reservoir Dogs. Y'all, why did I film this and then the next day the actor who played Mr. Blonde, Michael Madsen, passed away? I was like, did I manifest that? What is going on? The freak who was like torturing Mr. Orange while Mr. Orange was tied to the chair. I had a crush when I was in high school on this guy who dressed up as Mr. Orange for Halloween, and his best friend dressed up as Mr. Pink. What the hell is wrong with me? After we find out that Rico was the one who broke Kevin's hand, all of a sudden Neil is like, I don't know if this is such a good idea, because he's also realized that at a certain point, because the Ravens are in the same conference as the Foxes now, he is going to have to play against Rico Moryama. And even if Kevin didn't recognize him, he's really scared that Rico might, because Kevin is so like obsessed with Exie. Like his head is so far up the ass of the game of Exie that he wouldn't recognize his own mother if she came back from the dead and was like, hey girl, how you doing? Kevin turns out to be like not really a threat, but Neil is really worried that when they play against the Ravens at the end of the season, the winter season, Rico's going to recognize him. So I think his plan at this point in the book is that he is going to stay with the Foxes for as long as the first game with the Ravens and then run away immediately after that. But while he's at Palmetto, he still has to do school. So he starts looking for a major very strategically. I'm pretty sure he settles on Spanish because he's thinking like, if I can acquire language, then I can go to South America, and that opens up a whole other like realm of possibility for places that I can stay, because right now he only speaks French and German. They also have their first check-in with the team nurse, Abby. And this is when you notice that Neil is super traumatized. He's like closed off completely, and he's trying not to let anybody get too close. He even doesn't really like take his shirt off because he's afraid that Abby will see the horrific scars that he has on his back from his father's abuse and start asking questions, and he doesn't want her to ask questions. So he's just like, I'm not on drugs, I don't drink, I'm healthy, I'm fine. And she's super nice and super normal, but you see how he, as this like traumatized kid, is spooked and unable to trust even the most normal of adults in his sphere. It's move-in day, and the first person to move in that is Matt. Matt is the, I think, tallest member of the Palmetto State Foxes. He's live, very muscular, and a very like kind of like brute force type of guy. He's just like very strong. Matt is the son of a famous professional boxer and I think a famous doctor. And he grew up very wealthy in New York City. So why is he on the Foxes, you might ask? Well, when he was a child, part of him being like in his mom is the boxer, really wealthy, really famous world, was him becoming addicted to drugs at a very young age. So he's a recovering addict, and his mom like got him into boxing and Exie as a way of like rehabilitating him and helping him have something to like redirect his energy to. When he had like come to the Foxes initially, I think 2 or 3 years prior, he was like tap dancing on a razor's edge with his sobriety. Then something happened in his sophomore year that just like sopped it all up. It just like cleaned him up real quick, and he's been clean ever since. I think he's a 4th-year senior. They go up to 5 years in this program because it's a sports thing. I don't know if that happens in like other NCAA sports, but they have like 5th-year seniors on the Foxes and some kids who are a little bit older than everybody else. Oh my god, I forgot to introduce Nikki. I've been trying to introduce my fan casted pictures of the Foxes as they appear throughout the story. So I forgot to mention when Neil meets Nikki earlier on. So before Matt gets on campus, Neil meets Andrew and Aaron's cousin, Nikki. And Nikki is kind of like a difficult character. Nikki is gay, and I think his dad is the sibling of the twins' mom, so that's how they're related to each other. But his dad is a pastor, and his mom was rescued from Mexico by his father. It's one of those marriages, like think about like Joanna Gaines' parents. Okay, like her dad was in the military, her mom was from Korea, her dad rescued her mom from Korea. Now they're like conservative and living down in Texas. So when he comes out to them, they're very like not accepting of him and his sexuality. So as a way to escape his difficult home life, he ends up doing a study abroad program in high school that is in Germany, and he's going to move to Germany to live there with his boyfriend who he meets while he's there, except that Coach Wymack wants him to join the Foxes because he's recruiting Andrew and Aaron. Andrew and Aaron both played Exie in high school, and they were both really good, so but not like good enough to be like on a D1 team, and it's like misfits, people who would get lost otherwise. So he goes to Nikki, and they're basically like, do you want to join the team? Almost as a way of kind of like grounding and anchoring his cousins. He's a little bit older than all of the other Foxes because he took a gap year, I think, in between. He like took a year off in high school and then took a gap year in between college and high school, and so he is like 23 at the start of the first book, and he's, I think, a 4th-year senior. So Nikki, the first time we meet Nikki, he is in the like vestibule outside the stadium. When you're like going to a sports event and you're like going to your seats, and then further inside is the arena where they're playing the sports event, but like before you get to your seats, like between the entrance and before you get to your seats, that's where he is with Neil and Andrew. And he's like introducing himself to Neil, and he's being very overtly sexual. He's being like the stereotype of what a gay guy would be in the early 2000s. And Neil, at this point, like as far as we know, Neil is asexual. Like he doesn't have any interest in anyone. He talks about how his mom would threaten him whenever he showed any interest in girls, so he just kind of like didn't really develop those feelings for anybody. But Nikki is making him uncomfortable. Like the way that Nikki is coming on to him is making him uncomfortable, and that's noticeable. And Andrew is there, so Andrew is like, Nikki, stop doing that right now. And then Nikki doesn't stop. He like keeps teasing Neil, and Andrew corners him, like pins him up against a wall and puts a tiny knife to his throat. And this is when we find out that Andrew, he like wears these thick wristbands all the time, and he hides these blades in his wristbands. I think they're like sewn into the inside of the wristbands. He hides his knives in there. So he'll just like slide a knife out randomly and threaten someone and get to cutting. Another reason that he's with the Foxes is because he had like gotten arrested because Nikki was gay bashed, and he retaliated on the guys who gay bashed Nikki, this like group of guys who gay bashed Nikki, and beat them all so severely that he was like arrested and imprisoned. And part of his parole is that he has to stay on the team, he has to stay clean and off of drugs, and he has to take his medication for an unspecified mental illness that he has. So it's like this, him being on the Foxes is a part of the like reform program for him, basically. So getting back, Neil meets his new roommate, Matt, who is on the team. And Matt is also dating the team captain, Dan Wilds. Dan is my bitch. I love her. I love her so much. We don't meet Dan quite yet because she's flying in. Her and Renee, who's another girl on the team, both live in the Midwest. So they fly in together, and then Matt is going to go pick them up. And we will talk more about her when she like fully comes into the book. Matt shows Neil to the room, and he's like, this is our room. We have a third roommate whose name is Seth, but he's not here right now. He's coming in a little bit later. And Neil is like, okay. He takes the top bunk, and he's gonna go run down to the store to pick up some essentials. And when I say run, I mean literally run. Like, this kid runs almost everywhere. And he makes sure to lock the door before he leaves too. So like, he runs down to the store and he gets like some sheets, a pillow, a safe to keep his stuff in. And like I said earlier, his entire life is basically in a singular duffel bag. So it's maybe like 2 or 3 changes of clothes, and then this insane binder that he has in his go bag. And it has everything that he could possibly need if he needs to escape at the last minute. There's a fake optometrist note in there so that he can get his colored contacts without having any trouble. There are some like, you know, there's like clear binder dividers that have a hole in them. There's like some slips of those that are full of cash, the leftover cash that his mom stole from his dad. Contacts for people who can get him fake passports, a copy of his fake birth certificate as Neil Jostin, because Neil Jostin isn't his name. We don't know what his name is yet. It's like any type of things that you would need if you were running away from the mob, right? So he's like, I gotta run to the store and literally run back because he doesn't like to leave his binder alone. So he comes back with all of his essentials. He gets back into the room, and Matt, I think, has gone to the airport to go pick up the girl. And he's in the room, and he's like, the door was locked when I left, and the door was locked when I came in, but something's not right. He's like looking through his stuff, and to a person who's not like paranoid and on the run from the mob, the differences in like the way that his things look would not be consequential. But because he is paranoid and on the run from the mob, he's like, somebody's been in my room and has rifled through all of my things. He knows it wasn't Matt because Matt doesn't give a fuck. Matt doesn't have the energy to seem to be able to do that, and Matt's not even there. Seth isn't there. So he's like, the only people who it could be is one of the monsters. That's what they call Andrew's group. They call them the monsters because they're so rude and disagreeable. And Andrew is literally like a little monster. So he goes over to their room, and the door is locked, and he picks the lock and opens the door. And Andrew is in there with Nikki and Aaron and Kevin, and they're all talking in German. Nikki, the like 3 kids are talking in German, and I don't think Kevin speaks German, but Neil does because he lived in Germany for a time, so he knows exactly what they're saying. And they're like, didn't we lock the door? Like, how the hell did he get in here? But Neil turns to Kevin and he starts speaking to Kevin in French, and he's like, you better keep your pet monster on a fucking leash, because he knows that Andrew is the one who had to have broken into his room. Aaron doesn't care enough to do it. Nikki is too goofy to plan something like that. Kevin is too worried about Exie. It had to be Andrew. Like, Andrew is the criminal out of the 4 of them. And a critical thing that I forgot to mention is that in his binder, in Neil's binder, he has a bunch of clips of Kevin and Rico from over the years, like Kevin and Rico playing sports. So like, to an outside eye, it looks kind of like he's obsessed with either Kevin or Rico or both of them. And so like, Neil is super freaked out that one of the Foxes might have broken into his things because he's working for Neil's dad, or because he's working for Rico or something like that. He like does not know why they would break into his stuff, but he knows that it had to have been Andrew. So he goes to Kevin and he's talking to him in French, and he's like, you better keep your pet monster on a fucking leash. And Kevin is like, what the fuck are you talking to me about right now? And they get into this weird fight in French that ends with Neil calling Kevin the C word, I'm not going to say. And it's like a reference to how Kevin's hand was destroyed by Rico. And then they get into a huge physical altercation in the hallway. By the time the physical fight pops off, Dan has gotten back from the airport with Matt and Renee. And so Matt and the girls are able to break up the fight in the hallway. And Matt is like literally holding on to Kevin because Kevin is trying to beat Neil's ass. And this fight is the first time that Neil properly meets Dan, who is the team captain. So she's like, who the fuck is this kid who just got recruited onto my team? Now, let's get into Dan. Dan had a rough first year as the Fox's team captain. She was the only female team captain in NCAA Division I Exie. So the last season, there was a lot of hazing, there was a lot of like threats and cruelty from different fans of the sport just because they were like being sexist towards her, and also because her team sucked. So she was trying her best under like extreme pressureful circumstances, and especially considering her background, it was probably really difficult for her because Dan grew up in a trailer park with her aunt. Like her parents weren't really ever in her life, and when she was in high school she actually had to start stripping because that was like the only job that she could get to bring money in to the household. So she has a lot of friends from when she was stripping who she like calls kind of like her sisters, but she, outside of like her job as a stripper, she also played Exie on the team. And the reason that Wymack met Dan is because he was going to a game to watch Renee, to recruit Renee to be a Fox, and Dan happened to be playing on the opposing team, and he was like, wait, she's really good, I'm gonna recruit her too. Dan kind of sees him as like a father figure, in part because he took her out of this like really negative situation. She wasn't in a place where she was like really going to be able to afford to go to college without this sports scholarship. So he took her out of this negative situation, gave her the opportunity to get a college education and play this sport that she loves, and even potentially like succeed to a higher level in the sport, which just like wasn't a possibility for her prior. So she still goes home like over the summers to be with her family because she has a lot of younger siblings and her aunt and her like sisters from the strip club, but she really like loves Wymack and feels very indebted to him. Speaking of Renee, Renee is the other girl who comes in with Dan. Renee is super fucking cool in my mind. She's got a chin length bob that is dyed white with like pastel colors at the tips. And her backstory is, well, when like Neil meets her, he doesn't know what her deal is because she's like super quiet, really docile, very calm, and she's got this crazy hair, but she's wearing like really plain clothes. She's kind of dressed like Sister Mary Catherine. She has like a cross necklace on. And later on, he finds out that Renee was actually in a gang and she killed someone when she was a teenager, I'm pretty sure. And it was like the whole thing was just a really traumatic experience for her. It gets a little bit more into her backstory in later books, so we'll hit that when we get to those later books. But she became a born again Christian, was adopted by her foster mother, and her foster mother is the one who got her into Exie. And because she was such like a good player, but again, like these are people who wouldn't have been able to exceed to like NCAA status if they hadn't been recruited by Wymack. She like didn't have any like way to access that level of Exie playing. So her stepmom knew that Wymack had this team that he used to like reform people who had gone through difficult circumstances in their lives. So she called him and she was like, my daughter Renee has all this like stuff going on, and she's really good. Do you want to come see her? And then that's when Wymack met both Renee and Dan. So Renee and Dan go way back. And like I said, Dan is coming into this situation with absolutely no prior knowledge. She's like, why the fuck is Neil fighting Kevin? Kevin is the one who wanted Neil to join the team. What is going on? And Andrew butts in and diffuses the situation by basically tricking Neil into riding with the monsters to the stadium for their first like big team meeting. The team is about to meet for the first time in the school year in the Fox Stadium. And Andrew's like, it's okay. Neil is gonna ride with us in the car. He already agreed to before, you know, him and Kevin just had like a little tiff. And Neil, because he is suspicious and he has to like always go with the flow on things. He's like, yeah, I agreed to ride with them in the car earlier. So now Neil is in this like intense pressure cooker situation, right? Because everybody has to cool down. He gets invited after that to Dan's room to hang out, and they're like serving him sweet tea and like having pleasant conversation. And he's like, wow, me spending a month and a half with the monsters before the rest of the team got here really gave me like a bad impression of who the Foxes are, because they're so normal. Like, they're hospitable, they're kind, they're people who are just like trying to get to know him. And meanwhile, he spent like a month and a half with Andrew, like insulting him and asking him all these weird, intrusive questions and like smiling maniacally and waving knives in his face. So he's like, oh, damn. Sad, but I'm not going to befriend any of these people. It doesn't matter. And it's also just because like he's been trained by his background to not trust people. So he's being like really weird and aloof with these people who are just trying to be nice to him. So from this moment on, Neil is just like lying constantly. He leaves Dan's room. They're driving in the car down to Fox, the like stadium, to meet with Wymack. And he sees Andrew's car, and Andrew has this like flash sports car. It's a really nice car. He's like, how the f did this 19-year-old kid afford this beautiful car? What's going on? And the only people that Andrew lets drive his car are Nikki and Renee. And he's like, what is it that he trusts? Like, he gets Nikki, you know, Nikki's his cousin. But like, why does he trust Renee so much that he lets her drive the car? The thing about Renee and Andrew is like they're the only two. Renee is the only person who Andrew is really like friends with out of everyone on the Foxes. He barely tolerates everyone else. He protects Kevin. Nikki is his cousin. He hates his brother. But there's something about Renee that just like she's the only one who he's willing to talk to. And she also like keeps his secrets and he keeps her secrets, right? Neil is like driving down to the stadium with these guys, and Andrew's being a total shit to him because he didn't trust him. He like lies to them and says that the reason that he speaks French is because his mom is French, and that's why he was like yelling at Kevin in French, which is like not true. His mom is British. And Andrew knows that he's lying because he's not good at it. Like, this must have been the most stressful kid to have on the run with her, like when his mom was alive, because she was like, he's not smart, he's impulsive, he's bad at lying. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to keep us safe? Like, she was probably terrified. And that's why they moved all the damn time. Not just because his father's people were on his ass, but because she was like, this kid is a dumbass and he's gonna get us both killed. Andrew is manic. Like, he's behaving so erratically and like so combatively with Neil because he's manic now because he's on his medication. What type of mental illness has a medication that makes you manic if you get on it? I don't know, but that's what's happening with Andrew in this book. He has less inhibitions about his actions and like how he's going to provoke people because of this medication that he's on. So they go to the court to meet up with the team for the first time. And this is when Neil finally gets to meet the last two members of the Foxes, who are Seth and Allison. Seth and Allison are dating. Seth is a recovering drug addict who had a rough childhood like everybody else. And one thing to note, he's horribly homophobic. He's horribly homophobic. Like, he hates Nikki. He's mean. He hates Kevin, and Kevin hates him too. Like, and he's like the most crotchety and combative member of the Foxes. Like, he's a basically, and nobody really likes him, but they kind of like love him, you know what I mean? And then Allison is his girlfriend, and they have an incredibly volatile relationship. Like, they're always either screaming at each other or making out. Allison is kind of like the Paris Hilton of this world, but if Paris Hilton decided that she, instead of like being a socialite and like being best friends with the Kardashians and like doing fire crotch with Lindsay Lohan in the 2000s, was gonna like join a professional sports team, and then her family disowned her because of it. So Allison loves Exie, like it's the love of her life basically, and her family wants her to like follow in their footsteps and inherit their chain of resorts or whatever, and she's like, no, I want to go play Exie. And so her family is like, okay, well then you are written out of the fortune, we don't want anything to do with you anymore. So Allison is an outlier like Matt in the fact that she was like raised really wealthy, but she's not an addict like Matt was. She just like was not accepted by her family because she chooses to play sports instead of of lie around and do nothing. So the rest of the team, like not Neil and the monsters, the rest of the team have their physicals because they're just getting on campus. And then this is when they officially find out that the ERC, who is the governing body of Exie, has allowed the Ravens to switch into the Foxes district. And Kevin is devastated. Like, he was drinking bad when he found out that they might switch, and now that he knows that they are going to switch, he's losing it. At this point, this is when they're like, the Ravens are basically threatening Kevin for leaving them because they literally own him in their minds. Like, he is their property. How dare he leave? Part of the way that the Moryamas earn their money, like the mob part of the Moryama family earns their money, is by taking majority of the earnings of the Exie players that they train as members of the Ravens team. So he's like, he was willing to risk all of my earning potential as a top Exie player for a petty dispute. Like, he could kill me. I'm not safe. So he packed his bags, and that's when he ran to go join the Foxes. And it's also important to note that, like, the general public doesn't know what the Ravens are, but the Foxes know because Kevin does, and Neil knows because he was raised around it. So Kevin starts freaking out about the Ravens switching districts, and everyone is really understanding about it except for Neil. Like, Neil is like, well, why don't you just run away? Like, you know you're in danger. They could you, why are you still here? And in his mind, he's like, why are we all risking our lives going up against the Moryamas just for Kevin? They could kill us all, and we're gonna just like take it because we want to protect Kevin. Like, the Moryamas are not actually going to kill them all because that would bring way too much attention to the whole situation, and then it could expose the like illegal aspects of their business. But they will do shit that messes with them, messes with their money, puts them in danger. They could kill members of their staff, they could kill like people who are associated with them. So like, they are in danger in some ways. And also Neil is like, if they're watching us so closely, what if they recognize me because my father used to work with them? So he's really confused. He doesn't understand why Kevin is staying. He doesn't understand why everyone is willing to risk it all for Kevin. He is like, why don't we just cut our losses and run away? And Kevin is like, what the fuck? And Andrew is like, well, I'm going to protect him. And Neil is like, how are you going to do that, you 5'1" gremlin? It's almost at this point where he starts to kind of realize that the reason that they're willing to do all of this is because of how much they all love Kevin. He's not like, he's realizing it like subconsciously. It's not like conscious for him yet. So he's starting to feel this like mix of jealousy, but also fear, because he's like, well, why didn't I ever have anybody in my life who was willing to put everything on the line for me the way that these people are all willing to put everything on the line for Kevin? And he's also like, I should leave. Like, I should get out of here. I know that there's going to be a moment where the Moryamas will see me and know who I am, and I'm putting myself at risk, but he just can't bring himself to do it. And part of it is because he had always been jealous of Kevin growing up. He's like, well, Kevin got to live the life that I was supposed to live. Like, Kevin got to stay at the Ravens compound. He got to play with them. He got to train with them. He got to play Exie from a young age. He's number 2 in the game at the level that we're at, basically in the world. Like, there's a professional Exie that's above them, but then like at the level that they're at, Kevin is literally number 2. And the reason that we know that he's number 2 is because he has a number 2 tattooed on his face, that Rico tattooed on his face. And then number 3 is Jean Moreau, who's another kid who was sold to the Moryamas from Marseille, France. Neil is super jealous of Kevin because Kevin, he feels like, got to live the life that he had always dreamed of living. And now Kevin, when he has chosen to leave the Moryamas and leave behind this like amazing dynasty and all of these amazing opportunities that came along with it, instead of what Neil had to do, which was go on the run for 7 years and watch his mom die in front of him, Kevin gets to have this like chosen family of people who are willing to risk their lives to protect him. Neil is a jealous motherfucker. He's like thinking to himself multiple times throughout the book, I hate Kevin, I hate him, but like really he just wants to be him because he thinks his life was so much easier. And it's also like important to note that Neil is a controversial recruit for this team. Like, he is not as good as he would have been if he had stayed with the Moryamas and trained with them from a young age. He's good in a way because he's like, he studies the sport and he knows the sport really well because he's been watching it his entire life. But he's not as good as he should be to play at like a D1 NCAA level. And there are people on the team like Seth and Andrew who are little who are going to constantly remind him of that. His biggest flaw at this moment, like he's fast and he thinks really quick, but his biggest flaw at this moment is that he can't score on Andrew. Andrew is like one of the best goalies in the league. He just like doesn't really give a shit about anything at all. He's like a nihilistic, apathetic gremlin. Like the only things that he cares about are the people that he has to protect, that he's like promised to protect. He doesn't care about the sport enough to actually try, but even when he's not trying, Neil can't score on him. So Neil has to like work on that as he is going to be with the Foxes. We're about halfway through the book now, and this is when things start to get juicy. This is when I was like, I was reading for a long time up until this point, and I was enjoying it. I was like sucked in. But this chapter 7, this is the pivotal chapter where I was like, what is going on? The mafia sports empire was one thing, and then this chapter was something completely different. And then I got to the end of the book and I was like, oh, I fear I might be reading a masterpiece. The team is a fucking mess. Like I said, Allison and Seth are constantly either fighting or making out. Kevin and Seth hate each other. Matt is like doing his best to keep the team together, but there's only so much you can do with brute force. And Dan is a good leader, but like if they don't want to listen to her, they just won't listen to her. There's a group of willful people. The other problem is that like Nikki is just bad. Like he's just like not good at Exie, but he's on the team because he's there almost as like an anchor for his cousins. And he's a goof too, but he tries really hard, which is all you can really ask. Like he is silly and like not really good at Exie, but he's like willing to put in his 100%, which is sweet, I guess. Aaron is better than Nikki, and everyone else is good. Like Renee is another goalkeeper. She's good. Andrew is excellent. Kevin is amazing. So nobody is on Kevin's level. Earlier on, Neil had been kind of like invited / threatened by Andrew to go on a night out with the monsters on the weekend. So he gets through the first week of pre-semester practices with the Foxes, and then on I think Friday night is the night that they go out. Nikki gives Neil clothes to change into because he says that Neil's clothes are not acceptable for where they're going, and they don't tell him where they're going. They end up driving out to Columbia, which is the capital of South Carolina, and they start their night at Sweetie's to have dinner. While they're driving over there, Andrew like makes Nikki pull over on the interstate so he can throw up, and that Neil like figures out, because of the way that Andrew is acting, that when they go out on nights like this, Andrew doesn't take his medication, which like I said before makes him manic. The reason that he's not taking his medication is because he wants to be able to drink and do drugs. When they get to Sweetie's, they order the ice cream special, which is a bunch of ice cream sundaes, and under the pile of napkins is a bunch of little packets of this drug that they call cracker dust. Cracker dust is this that like tastes like salt and sugar mixed together, and it's like an upper basically. I don't know if this is real because I don't know. I don't do shit. Maybe it's like poppers. I don't know. Andrew takes a bunch of them. Now Neil does not drink or do because he's scared that if he's inebriated in any way, he's going to say or do something that could endanger him and like give up the ghost on his like carefully constructed web of lies that he's tells in each of the different parts of the country that he's in. So he's basically teetotal by choice. So he sees the guys doing these drugs and he's like, okay, whatever, I don't know how I had to be here for this, but sure. Sweeties, they drive to this club called Eden's Twilight. And clearly there are regulars there because the bouncers, the bartenders, like everybody knows this group by name. They're saying, hi, Andrew. Hey, Andrew. And like Andrew is not the most personable person. So Neil is like, I guess he goes clubbing all the time. Like, what the is going on? And when they go up to the bar, Andrew orders, and everybody orders the usual, but Neil orders a soda because, like I said, he doesn't drink. The guys start slamming drinks. Like they are just knocking them back. I think they all have fake IDs or like this place doesn't card. I don't know. It was 2006. They are just like slamming these drinks back, and Neil is drinking sodas, and he keeps going up to the bar on his own to reorder his sodas because he doesn't trust any of the guys to not like do something to his drink. And they seem like really adamant for him to like drink drink alcohol, and he's like, I don't want to do that. I don't trust these guys. I'm gonna go get my own drink. They order a round of shots, and Neil finally gets peer pressured into taking a shot. But as soon as he takes the shot, he's like, oh fuck, that was a mistake, because the shot is like way too sweet. It's like, it doesn't taste like alcohol, basically. So he realizes that his shot has been spiked with cracker dust. This is also when he realizes that the sodas that he's been nursing have also been spiked by the bartender. Like, Andrew told the bartender before they even got to the bar that he was bringing Neil there, and he was going to do the thing that he always does, apparently, at this bar. And so the bartender knew to give him spiked sodas instead of regular sodas whenever he was ordering. So Neil is like, I'm drunk and high at the same time, and I did not plan for this. And he then basically gets like carried onto the dance floor by Nikki, and Nikki forces a vodka and cracker dust filled kiss on him, which I could throw up just thinking about it. I don't like saliva, particularly like large amounts of other people's saliva, and the idea of having to swallow something that someone is putting in my mouth, like, I don't. Bleh. And he like kisses him and then leaves him in the middle of the dance floor. So this is clearly something that Andrew and these boys have done before, and it's all like very perfectly choreographed to get whoever their target is up so that their inhibitions will be down and they won't be thinking properly. So as soon as the like alcohol and cracker dust starts to hit, Andrew starts questioning Neil because he does not trust him. He has not trusted him since he met him, basically. And that is the point of this whole cracker dust thing. So he like Andrew like created a situation where he would be able to finally get like Neil's defenses down enough that he could ask him questions, and Neil either wouldn't be able to remember or wouldn't be able to think fast enough to come up with lies to answer the questions that Andrew is asking him. So a little excerpt from this moment. Shut up, Neil said. Why can't you leave me alone? Because I don't trust the way you look at him, Andrew said. Edgar Allan is in our district and you are on my team. You're a know-nothing from Arizona who somehow managed to catch Kevin's eye. You, a lie from head to toe with a bag full of money and a hard-on for everything Kevin and Rico. Do you understand? Neil did, but he was as baffled as he was furious. I'm not a mole. Are you kidding me? Prove it, Andrew said. You take a minute to think it over. Think how badly you want to try my patience right now. I'll be back. He's like not answering any of Andrew's questions, and Andrew is basically saying to him like, you're a mole for the Moryamas. You came here to fuck with Kevin. Who the fuck are you? Tell me quickly, or we're gonna leave you in this club tonight. And Neil is not with the shits. Like, he refuses to do it, and he tries to escape, but because he's up, he just like keeps running around in circles, and he ends up like trying to go upstairs to get away from them, but Nikki is coming down the stairs while he's trying to go up the stairs, and then he just blacks out and he just like passes out and wakes up the next morning in an unfamiliar house in Columbia, South Carolina. He's there with just Aaron and Nikki. He's like, where the are Andrew and Kevin? And Nikki is like, they went to go get food, and he's refusing to take water even, but he's like horribly dehydrated from these crackers. He basically is like, I don't trust any of this. I don't trust this. I'm scared. Why am I here? What am I doing here? What the did you guys do to me last night? I need to get out of here. And Nikki is like, okay, they're bringing us food and there's some water for you. Like, it's okay, relax. We do this all the time, basically. And you can tell that Nikki feels really bad. Like, he forced 2 separate vodka and cracker dust filled kisses on Neil, and he's like, I didn't want to do this, but it's just easier if you just do what Andrew tells you to do. Neil's like, I don't give a fuck about what you're talking about. I'm getting out of here. So he pretends that he's going to go to the bathroom, and like in the bathroom there's a towel, there's a change of clothes, there's a fully stocked shower, and he puts on the change of clothes and climbs out the window and runs down the street. He ends up like flagging down a taxi. He always keeps cash on him in case like he has to make a quick getaway and he's not anywhere near his binder. So he escapes in like the most confusing way possible. Like, he flags down a taxi, gets the taxi to take him to a gas station where there's a payphone. On the payphone, he calls Matt, and he tells Matt that he went out to Columbia with Andrew the night before. And Matt's like, what? Like, why did you do that? Why didn't you say something to me? Like, but he's not surprised in the way that Neil expected him to be surprised. Like, Neil expected him to be like, what do you mean you went out to Columbia with Andrew? Like, what happened while you were there? But Matt basically knows exactly what he's talking about. And so Neil from that gathers like, oh, they've done this before. to other people on the team. And he tells Matt that it's going to take him a while to get back to campus. He needs Matt to make sure that Andrew doesn't get into the room because he doesn't want Andrew to look through his stuff again and start to like dig deeper, because he refused to answer any of Andrew's questions and then immediately escaped the next morning. So then, like I said, he gets back to Palmetto in the weirdest way possible. He's talking on the phone to Matt at the gas station, and then he calls another cab to take him to a truck stop. And at the truck stop, he pretends that he's a sociology student and asks a bunch of truckers if he can ask them questions while they drive him in the direction that he needs to go. And then he finds someone who's willing to drive him in the right direction. So he takes that ride, but it drops him off 11 miles away from campus. So he just walks the 11 miles. That's 3 hours. He walks for 3 hours in the summer in South Carolina. I know he didn't have any banana boat on him. That's crazy. He must be thin as a sheet of paper. Like, he runs everywhere. He was going to run, but he didn't run because he was like, I'm too dehydrated to run. So let me just walk for 3 hours. Now, mind you, he's been slamming bottles of water and eating granola bars. So, like, he's got a little bit of something in his stomach, you know? But still, an 11-mile walk. Just thinking about that makes my feet hurt. I know some people, maybe some people watching this video right now, who an 11-hour walk sounds like light work to them. And mashallah, to each their own. Neil ends up walking to Wymac's apartment on campus. And like by this point, Matt has told Wymac that Neil was in Columbia with the guys, but the guys got back hours ago. So Wymac is like, where the fuck were you? Like, what were you doing? And Neil is like, I don't know, I was just coming back. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. And Wymac is like, next time, if you're ever in a situation like that again, call somebody to give you a ride. Like, don't just float your way back here. I don't even know if at this point Neil has a phone. Like, I think somebody like forces him to get a phone at a certain point in the book, but like he doesn't like using it because he doesn't like feeling like he can be like tracked or tied down to anything. So Wymac gets pissed that he didn't call him or Abby, but then Wymac gets Andrew over to his apartment and he's like, whatever the fuck is going on between the two of you, hash it out right now because I'm tired of this. Like, their beef is messing with the season for the rest of the foxes. And if they don't hash things out now, it's going to make things even more volatile for the rest of the season. So while Neil was walking 11 miles from Spartanburg to Palmetto, he came up with a story that was like full of half-truths that was enough of the truth that Andrew would believe him, but not enough of the truth that if Andrew was like a sleeper agent or a spy or something, that he would be able to report Neil back to his father or to the Moryamas. So he ends up having this conversation with Andrew in German because he doesn't want Wymac to hear and understand what he's saying to Andrew. So he says he hoped Wymac couldn't speak German and switched languages to lay into Andrew. What the hell is your problem? How can you threaten Nikki for coming on to me but condone drugging me out of my mind against my will? Why can't you just leave me alone? That wiped the irritation off Andrew's face. It was forever before Andrew answered in German. That's unexpected. Did no one tell you I hate surprises? So this is when Andrew learns that on including French, Neil also speaks German. And he's like, who the fuck is this kid? But it does also bring up an important question, which is that it's like Andrew threatened Nikki earlier because Nikki, came on to Neil in a very like sexually aggressive way. And Neil is asking him, like, how could you get so mad at Nikki for coming on to me like that? And then me, basically roofie me in order to like ask me whatever question you want. And Andrew is honest. He's like, I don't trust you. I think you're a mole. I think you're working for the Moryamas, and I think you're a danger to Kevin. So what is it? Because if that's the case, you're gonna get out of here right now, or I will snap you in half. And Neil lies. He tells his half-truths. He says that his family worked for the Moryamas, his father specifically, and his parents were killed for skimming money from them. And he says the reason that he knows Kevin is because he met him before. Wow, he tells the truth about that. Like, he met Kevin before but he didn't want Kevin to recognize him because he's on the run. And that's why he's kind of obsessed with Kevin, and he knew things about Kevin before he came to the Foxes. And it's also why he decided to join the Foxes. So he basically asks Andrew to let him stay on the team until the game with the Ravens because he's not a threat to Kevin and he hates the Moryamas just as much as Kevin and Andrew do. It's not the truth, but Andrew accepts the story and tells Neil that he's basically going to stop harassing him because he knows that he's not a mole and he's not there to endanger Kevin. Neil goes back to Fox Tower from Wymack's apartment, and the rest of the Foxes, mainly Dan and Matt, like chew him out for not calling for help when he could have. And Neil promises that if he's ever in a situation like that again, he's going to call for help, but he doesn't mean it. He's like, I'll just say whatever the fuck you want me to say so you can get off my back. So Andrew's actions at this point in the book are absolutely insane and unhinged. And when I got to this part, my first read through, I was like, they have to kill him. Like, he's a liability. Because who the fuck does this? And not just does this, but does this to multiple people over the course of like however many months that he's been on this team, right? But thinking about it later, it's like his actions are crazy, but it's understandable why he would be so concerned, right? He doesn't know who this kid is. His hair is clearly dyed and probably dyed badly. He has colored contacts that are probably obvious. He has a go bag full of information about Kevin and Rico. It's almost like he's a spy and Kevin is his target and he has to like take Kevin out. Like, it makes sense that Andrew would be like, no, you're dangerous. What the fuck are you doing here? Like, though I don't condone the way that he went about it, but I do understand why he does the things that he does. And Neil is able to basically just like get him off his back long enough to be able to play the game and not have Andrew constantly be like suspicious of him and questioning him. Now that Andrew knows that Neil isn't a threat to Kevin, he lets Kevin basically do whatever he wants to do with Neil. So earlier in the book, Kevin had told Neil to give him his game. And that basically means like, I'm going to make you the best Exie player you can possibly be. And you're going to do whatever I tell you to do because you're going to give me your game. So they start to have these morning training sessions with Neil and Kevin, and Andrew always comes because Andrew still, he like does not leave Kevin's side. Kevin is working Neil super hard, like, because he knows that Neil can be better than he actually is. And like throughout this, Neil has talked a little bit about how he's heard rumblings of Kevin mentioning that he thinks Neil has really high potential and he thinks that he could be a really great player and that he could potentially go to court. Court is what they call the like NBA of Exie, basically. But he doesn't believe it because Neil doesn't have any intrinsic self-worth, right? So he is like, Kevin would never say that about me. That's not true. But Kevin works him like he does really actually believe in him because he does. So then in the last like quarter of the book, that's when school finally starts. It starts towards the end of August. And the last like 4 chapters of the book take place over a 3-page span. Wednesday is their last practice before school starts and the rest of the students come in, and it's no longer their campus because they've been like milling around and doing whatever the fuck they wanted for the past like since May. So like for the past 2 months, 3 months. And then Friday they have their first game, and then Saturday they have like press after the game. So Wednesday, anybody who hasn't done it yet basically has to have a mandatory meeting with the team psychiatrist, Betsy Dobson. Betsy Dobson, she's just a psychiatrist, and as expected, Neil is a fucking weirdo. He's closed off, he's terse, he's like not willing to answer any of her questions. He's being really like standoffish with her because he doesn't want her to be able to put anything in his file that would potentially incriminate him and like be able to trace back to his past. So everything he tells her is basically a lie. Like, he's like, my mom's a physician, my dad is a fucking engineer. Like, he's not telling her anything that's the truth. And she knows that, again, because he's horrible at lying. But he just does it because he's like, I don't have anything to lose. I'm not even going to be here for the full like 4 or 5 years that I'm supposed to be here in order to be a member of this team. So I can just bolt this. So this is when the team finds out that part of Kevin's transfer deal to be able to come to the Foxes, the ERC approved it in part because he agreed to go on a like regional talk show, the Kathy Ferdinand show, which is based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and basically like do publicity for the sport. Kevin is booked to go on Kathy Ferdinand for the first exclusive interview since he was injured the December prior. So he has not been seen in public basically or spoken to anybody, spoken to any press in 9 months, and this is going to be his first interview. They decide that the whole team is going to drive up there with him as like a show of support. And there's a lot of hype around the Foxes at this point because of Kevin's addition. People are like intrigued to see how he's going to be able to play with his right hand because his left hand was destroyed, if he's going to be like at the same caliber that he was before, and if it's going to be a situation where like a rising tide raises all ships, or if the team is going to like bring Kevin down to their level. And everyone's also intrigued because they lost a player last year, a fifth-year senior. So they recruited someone and they have not said anything about their new recruit. And that new recruit is Neil. Neil wanted to put off releasing his name and information to the press because of course he didn't want like his father's people to know where he was and what he was doing if they somehow managed to recognize him. So they put it off for as long as they could, but it's the day before their first game and the coach is like, look, I know you told me not to release your information, but I have to do it now. Like tomorrow's the first game, they're gonna say what your name is and release your picture. You're gonna be on camera playing the game. Like people are gonna know who you are. I once again cannot stress enough how stupid it is for this kid who is on the run from the mafia, regardless if he's changed his eye color, regardless if he's changed his hair color. He hasn't gotten plastic surgery, okay? He's on the run from the butcher of Baltimore. And he is playing in a televised NCAA sport, the most popular sport in the NCAA. Think about how many views March Madness gets. And this is more popular than that in this world. For a team that has a bunch of eyes on it because it just acquired a player that it never should have been able to acquire. Nobody knows who he is. He's like a ghost. This game is so intense that there are fans who are ravenous enough that they will vandalize teams' parking lots and like haze team members who they think are not good enough for the team. This is a massive risk that just cannot be controlled in the way that he seems to think he's able to control it. But I'm not going to harp on that too much because again, if he didn't get on the team, there wouldn't be a book series, right? The Friday after the first day of school is the day of their first game, and they're probably going to lose. Like they know that they're probably going to lose because their team is a mess and they're the worst, and they barely have enough players to fill a roster. Like they have just one extra player, so there's one person who can rotate in and out in between halves to like give the other members of the team a break. This is when Neil learns that there's a big betting pot amongst the Foxes about whether Andrew and Renee are dating. They're all like, well, there has to be something going on with them because she's the only one that he lets like near her. She's the only one that he lets like do the you know when you are like on a sports team in high school and you have to like run around and like do the mile. She's the only one that he lets walk around and do the mile circuit with him, right? So Neil is trying to figure it out too. He doesn't really understand what's going on with them, but he's really nosy for someone whose like life is at stake. He's like, I could die any day, but Renee and Andrew are so close. I wonder what that's about. Why don't you worry about yourself? Worry about getting some more colored contacts. See if you can spend some of those hundreds of thousands of dollars that you have on a fucking nose job so that you will be unrecognizable. Like, his head is never where it needs to be, basically. It's all for the game, quite literally. His head is always in the game and it's never in survival. This is also when you start to learn about some of the like mechanics of Andrew's medication and his like mental illness, maybe personality disorder, maybe post-traumatic stress. Like we don't really know what's going on. So I'm going to read from a couple of pages just to kind of like give you an idea of Andrew's medication situation. And if you know what's happening, you can let me know because I can't figure it out. So Dan made a face at her but didn't deny it. So Andrew's technically legally required to take his medication, right? Neil had a feeling he knew where this conversation was going, but he didn't believe it. Yes, it was part of his plea bargain. Well, he struck a bargain of his own with Coach, Dan said. The only reason he signed with us is because Coach agreed to let him come off his drugs for game nights. Coach ran it by us first since we're the ones out there on the court with him, but no one else can know. Not even Betsy knows he does it. She's his doctor. She'd have to put an end to it. How is Andrew supposed to guard our goal when he's sick? He asked. In Colombia, Andrew softened his withdrawal with alcohol and cracker dust, but he couldn't do that here. Neil still remembered how violently Andrew shook as he puked on the roadside. He's not sick yet, Matt said. He put his hand at eye level. Andrew's withdrawal is a 3-stage process. Imagine you're flying high all day, then suddenly you stop drugging. First, you crash. That's stage 1. He doesn't get sick until stage 2. Andrew adjusts his schedule on Fridays depending on what time our serve is, Dan said. He misses his dose half an hour before the game starts and always plays first half. Usually he can ride stage 1 until halftime. Then he takes his medicine again and spends the rest of the night on the bench. Neil guessed that was how Andrew slept all the way to Columbia. He almost made it all the way to Sweetie's before getting violently ill. What's stage 3? Give him his drugs or get stabbed in the face? Matt said dryly. It's not fun. Luckily, we've only ever seen him get that far once. Won't get that bad tonight, Dan said. Besides, you'll be half the court away from him. We just thought you should have a heads up, even if it's a couple months late. Is it going to jeopardize our match? Neil asked. No more than anything else will, Matt said. Then I don't care, Neil said. He can do what he wants. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Anyone I've talked to who has read this book series knows that doesn't make any sense. There are discussions online about how that doesn't make any sense. What psychiatric medicine can cause withdrawal that violent within hours of missing a dose? I don't know what's going on with this, like the mechanics of this mental illness and the medication that he's on. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. Just be sure to like tag spoiler if there's like spoilers for future books, just in case there's people down there who haven't read the entire book series, because I don't know how or why she constructed the mental illness in this story the way that she did, but she did. I'm not going to harp on it too much. Okay, so the Foxes are playing against the Breckenridge University Jackals, and this is the first time you really get to see Exie in action. This is a violent game. Like, this is not a game for the faint of heart. There is cross-checking, there's slamming, tripping, knocking people's sticks out of their hands, hitting them in the fingers while they're holding their sticks. Like, anything to get the ball in the opposing team's net. There has to be like a high level of communication, coordination, and focus between members of the teams in order to score and get a goal. Because you're in an enclosed space. Like I said, the court is like in a room basically. So you're in an enclosed space trying to get a ball into a small goal that is heavily guarded with people who are authorized to physically harm you, like basically do everything except punch you in the face in order to stop you from making a goal, right? The Foxes don't have that level of coordination. They don't have that level of communication. But Neil is scrappy and he's excellent at shit talking to people and to like throw them off their game. And he's also incredibly fast. So he plays fairly well in his debut game. He ends up scoring 2 points during the game, which is pretty impressive for a debut, especially a debut with as little experience as he has or as he's purported to have. And even though the Foxes lose to the Jackals 9-7, the Foxes get 7 points, the Jackals get 9. People are impressed with him and his ability to have scored twice during this game. So the next day is the Kathy Ferdinand show. They drive to Raleigh, and this whole chapter, like this whole episode, basically proves why Neil never should have joined this fucking team in the first place. There's constant discussions about his like survival instinct. Now he has like a surprising survival instinct for someone who's had such like a rough life. He doesn't have a survival instinct. He's running head first into the fire while covered in gasoline. That is not a survival instinct. This is a person who wants to die and die fast, but die he will not. Okay? When they get there, Neil finds out that he is expected to go on the show as well. A nationally syndicated talk show to talk about the number one NCAA sport in the country. With his dyed hair and his brown contacts. So Kathy says to him, Neil Jostin, good morning. I suppose you've already heard the good news. As of 11 o'clock last night, your name is the third highest search string for NCAA Exie strikers. That puts you right after Rico and Kevin. How does it feel? Neil's stomach bottomed out. I didn't need to know that. Yeah. People are searching for his name and they can't find anything because he doesn't exist, which is very suspicious. So Kathy invites, or rather really demands, that he be on the show next to Kevin, and he is terrified, as he should be. So Neil and Kevin are on this talk show answering questions, the standard questions that you might ask. Like, she's intrigued in Neil because his story is that he picked up Exie within a year while he was in Arizona. Like, he basically lied and said that his first game was when he was senior in Arizona, and they're like, how was he able to pick the sport up so quickly, catch the attention of Kevin Day, and then join at such a high level? It's kind of like Misty Copeland. Like, she started ballet at age 13 and then grew to be a principal dancer with the American Ballet Theater. So Kevin and Neil, they're answering these questions about why Kevin turned into such a recluse after he joined the Foxes, why they didn't tell anybody about Neil until their first game, yada yada. And then Kathy reveals a surprise. She has invited Rico Moryama to join them on the show. Neil is scared because Rico has been the factor that he has been avoiding this entire time. His plan thus far has been to play the game against Edgar Allan right before winter break and then disappear, because he basically told himself, if Rico recognizes me when we play this game, I'm dead. The Moryamas are gonna know who I am. They're gonna tell my father's gonna come get me. I'm dead. So he was like, I'm gonna have to leave as soon as we play this game. As soon as Rico sees me when we play this game, I'm going to have to get the fuck out of there. Well, now Rico is seeing him, and it's the third day that he is on the Foxes. They've played one singular game this year, and the thing that he was avoiding this entire time has happened. And also, Kevin is shitting himself because this is his abuser. This is the guy who has been abusing him his entire life, basically. So the penultimate chapter is fucking crazy. Okay, I remember I was reading this in my bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, no fucking way. Every time something happened, I was like, no way. Oh my god, no. It was crazy. So Rico comes out to intimidate Kevin, and it seems to be working because Kevin is terrified, but he can't show that he's terrified because then that would give too much away about the Moryamas. And why would he be scared of this person who has been basically billed as his best friend, his bosom buddy from childhood, when in reality Rico is his owner and Kevin is his slave? That is the closer to the relationship that they have. So he can't let it show how scared he is because the public perception would fuck with the Moryamas, but he's also so he is just mentally in prison. And to compensate, Neil starts being a little shit. Rico is talking his to Kathy Ferdinand, and he says Palmetto State is a waste of Kevin's talents, and Neil says, not as much as Edgar Allan was. And this is when I said, this is a child with a death wish. Okay. Not only does he wants to die. If the only thing that you know about this boy is that he is the son of a mafioso, okay, sure. But you also know that he's a sadistic torturer of children who is so flippant with the protection of his family's secret that he almost got it exposed by destroying the hand of his alleged best friend on a whim. Does that make sense? He doesn't give a fuck. He's just gonna do whatever he wants, Rico Moryama, right? So knowing that, the way that Neil starts talking, someone in the audience laughed, entertained by Kathy's mouthy guess. Your team's ranked first. Congratulations and big deal. Maintaining a top position is far easier than starting over from the gutters. Kevin is doing that right now. He's facing entirely new schools and learning to play with his less dominant hand. When he masters it, and he will, he'll be better than you could ever have made him. Do you know why? Neil asked, but he didn't let Rico answer. It's not just his natural talent. It's because he's with us. There are only 10 Foxes this year. That's one sub for every position. Think about it. Last night we played Breckenridge. They have 27 people on their roster. They can burn through players as fast as they want because they have a pile of replacements. We don't have that luxury. We have to hold our ground on our own. You didn't hold your ground, Rico said over the Fox's applause. You lost. Your school is a laughingstock of the NCAA. Your team has no concept of, you're a team with no concept of teamwork. Lucky for you, Neil said. If we were a united front, you wouldn't have a chance against us. You cannot last, and your unfounded arrogance is offensive to everyone who actually earned a spot in Class 1. That's what they call Division 1. Everyone knows the only reason Palmetto qualified for this division is because of your coach. Funny, I'm pretty sure that's how Edgar Allan qualified. We've earned our prestige 1,000 times over. You've earned nothing but pity and scorn, neither of which will be tolerated in a sport. Someone as inexperienced as you has no right to have an opinion on the matter. All the same, I'll give you one more, Neil said. I don't think they're telling Kevin to sit out because of his health. I think you know this season is going to be a disaster for your reputation. You and Kevin have always played in each other's shadow. You've always been a pair. Now you have to face each other on the court as rivals for the first time, and people are finally going to know which one of you is better. They're going to know how premature this was. Neil gestured at his face, meaning Rico and Kevin's tattoos, because Rico has the number 1 tattoo and Kevin has the number 2 tattoo. I think you're scared. I'm not scared of Kevin. I know him. You're going to eat those words, Neil said. You're going to choke on them. That sounds like a challenge, Kathy cut in with a quick look between them. Talking spicy to the mob boss's son. Talking spicy to the torturer of children. That's when I said, oh. I said, oh, I didn't know what I was getting into. And then it gets crazier. So he's talking crazy on camera to Rico. And Rico has, like I said, broken people's hands for less. So when they get off stage, Rico starts being incredibly intimidating to both Neil and Kevin because Kevin was defiant and Neil was disrespectful. And Neil is literally nothing to him. So how dare he disrespect him? And Andrew has to de-escalate the situation. Andrew comes in and he's like, and what exactly are you doing, Rico Moryama? Because Andrew, at first I didn't understand like why he was like, I'll protect Kevin. But now, like thinking about it again, he's great protection for Kevin because he has literally nothing to lose. Like he doesn't value his life in any way. So he'll literally, if Rico steps to Kevin in the wrong way, he'll literally kill him and not care that the Moryamas will retaliate against him because he has no sense of value of his own life. So he's great protection because he will take out the threat against Kevin without any fear if that's what has to happen. So Rico is like talking his shit about how he's amazing and all the foxes are nothing to him. And then he goes off and Coach Wymack chews out Neil for starting with a known dangerous person. Like the only thing they know about Rico is that he's fucking dangerous. And Neil was like, I want some of that. And Coach is like, we're trying to keep everyone alive until the end of the school year. And here you go starting shit, you big dumb dummy, get on the bus. So after this, Andrew is intrigued by Neil because he's like, he sees the value that Neil sees in Kevin. Like it's not just one-sided. It's not just like Kevin sees something in Neil and wants Neil to be on the Foxes. It's like Neil was almost protective of Kevin in that moment. And because of that, Andrew starts to be like, there's something interesting about this kid. So he's literally like talking to Neil and he's like, so you said you were terrified of Rico seeing you and recognizing you. And then you immediately started talking to him as soon as he was in your vicinity. So like, what is the truth? Andrew finally has to have this tough conversation with Neil and tell him like, running was something you could do when you were invisible and nobody knew who you were. Now you have with Rico Moryama on national television. You've joined this Exie team. Like, if you think you're going to be able to do this and then just disappear overnight and someone isn't going to immediately find you and kill you, you're wrong. Andrew's talking to Neil and he says, don't you understand? Running was only an option when no one was looking. You knew that back in June. It's why you wanted to leave before October. You could have left before Rico knew you existed. You should have left before you insulted him in front of all of his adoring fans. Now you can't go. Rico wants to know who defied him. He'll get his answers. You can't outrun your past anymore. I have to try, Neil said. Andrew hummed a little in mock disapproval. Have to nothing. There you go again, thinking there's only one choice. I thought you didn't want to leave. I don't want to, Neil said. What would it take to make you stay? The question was so unexpected, Neil had to turn back. I was also confused when he asked him this question. I was like, why do you care about what it would take to make us stay? Like, I thought you didn't give a fuck about anybody except Kevin, Renee, and people we've agreed to protect. I was like, what is going on right now? Andrew laughed quietly at his shock and leaned forward. Name it and it's yours. It doesn't matter what it is so long as you stand your ground here with us. I can't. You can. You have everything you need to survive. You're just too afraid to see it. I don't understand. Andrew sighed as if Neil was being difficult on purpose. Rico will find out the truth, but he can't tell his brother. For starters, Rico and Ichiro aren't allowed to associate with each other, seeing how they belong to separate branches. More importantly, Coach Moryama won't let him. This year is about Kevin and Rico. See, he won't want news about you getting out and distracting people from their showdown. They're free to make your life a living hell, and they'll try to use the truth against you, but they can't sell you. They're free to make your life a living hell, and they'll try to use the truth against you, but they can't sell you out yet. Use that time to narrow the angles they can get at you. Kevin wants to make you a star, so let him. Take what he's giving you and make it your shield. It's hard to kill a man when everyone's eyes are on him. Make them love you. Make them hate you. I don't care. Just make them look at you. You have 1 year to figure it out, Andrew said, putting a finger in Neil's face. For 1 year. I'll stand between you and the Moryamas if you stand at Kevin's side. Next year, your life is your problem again. Understand? Why? Neil asked. Why would you help me? Ask me later, Andrew said. This is when I realized I was reading a book. It's in the chapter that follows this. This is when I realized I was reading a book. He's basically telling Neil, like, if you keep Kevin locked in enough and like interested enough, because like if Neil is gone, Kevin's not going to give a fuck about the foxes, because he kind of already, they're all already like known entities to him, but Neil is an opportunity for him to mold someone in his image, and he really is excited by that opportunity, and that's what's like keeping himself basically because of the like stress of his PTSD. Gambling debts that he owed to the mob that he wasn't paying off, and it's like, you can't kill Michael Jordan, because everybody's gonna be like, well, why is Michael Jordan dead? Like, why is the #1 basketball player in the world not alive anymore? But you can kill the people that he cares about. So Andrew's basically saying to Neil, like, this is your, Exie is your shield. Exie is your out. As long as you keep Kevin's interest and let him improve you as a player, and also make yourself known to the fans of the game. Like, this isn't gonna work if you're just some like support player for a shit team. Like, it's not gonna work if you're Seth, right? Or if you're fucking, well, actually, if you're Aaron, honestly, because he fucking hates Aaron. Like, you make yourself Kevin Day's #2. You make yourself court material. You make yourself material for the next, like, captain of the team. Yeah, people will be paying attention to you. And because people will be paying attention to you, that's your insurance policy. And they won't be able to kill you. Which seems obvious, but Neil has been in fight or flight for so long that, like, I don't even know if his brain power works. Like, I don't know what his processing power is, really. Andrew agrees to protect him for this year, and he gives him 3 hours to decide. He's like, either come out with us to Columbia tonight in 3 hours, or pack up your bags and leave, because if you don't accept my protection, you're gonna die. If you try to leave in October, you're gonna die. If you try to leave prematurely, Kevin's gonna kill himself because he's not gonna have anything to live for. So, like, either you accept my protection or you just get the fuck out of my face, basically. And then Neil decides that he's going to accept the offer, and he accompanies the monsters to Columbia. They talk about how they have to take Neil shopping because everything that he owns is basically threadbare trash, and Coach is mad at them that they haven't already done it. They were supposed to take him shopping like weeks ago, and because he doesn't have any nice clothes, and things start to come together for the readers, but they don't come together for Neil because Neil is a blockhead. And also they didn't come together for me on my first read through because I was just trying to like figure out what was going to happen. I was like I don't know, I was just like trying to figure things out. I was like, wait, what's going on? So I don't even remember this passage, but I thought it would be important to pull out for y'all. So Neil is talking to Nikki while they're in Columbia, and Nikki's saying, I wouldn't say they hate each other. He's talking about Aaron and Andrew. It's like, I wouldn't say they hate each other, but they've got some pretty serious issues. Wouldn't you if you were them? Nikki asked. Family means something different with us because it has to. It's not about blood. It's not even about who we like. It's about who Andrew's willing to protect. Neil's stomach twisted with another chilly what if? And he's including me because of this morning? Partly, Nikki said, but partly because you're the reason Kevin's going to stay with our team. Andrew's got Kevin's back, but you've got Kevin's attention. And that is kind of like the clincher for the like chosen family thing. It's like, this is when Andrew made his choice. He's like, I'm interested in Neil. I want to protect him. I want to make sure that he doesn't die. He's made that choice with Renee. He's made that choice with Kevin too. He's made that choice with Nikki because Nikki's his cousin, but also because he's like, I'm going to make sure that nobody's fuck with him. And he also made that choice with Aaron. So Nikki's saying like, family isn't about blood. It's not about who we like. It's about who Andrew's willing to protect. Andrew protected Aaron against their mom. He doesn't like Aaron. They're not friends. They're not close, but he protected him, right? So if Neil was smart, this is when he would be like, okay, I'm safe. Not like relax. You know, I'm not saying put your guard down because you've had your guard up for how many years of your life, you know? But I'm just saying, like, you could look around and know, okay, these people are going to have my back. But Neil isn't smart. He's also traumatized. So he's talking to Andrew later and he's like, here's some honesty. I don't like you, and I don't trust you. It's mutual, Andrew said. That doesn't change anything. Doesn't change that he's going to protect him. Nikki says you're only keeping me here because of Kevin, Neil said. What happens if Kevin gets bored of me? Keep his interest, Andrew said, and it wasn't really a suggestion. So they go out to Eden's Twilight together, and they're all having fun. Neil doesn't really know how to do that. They end up going home back to Andrew's house in Columbia, and at some point Neil has learned that like Andrew owns this house. Basically, he was able to get the car that he drives, a like really fancy flashy car, and the house with the insurance money from his mom's death. The insurance company, they never like said that he killed her, so he got the insurance payout, and he was like, I don't want the money, like I don't want this blood money, because he doesn't like his mom because she abandoned him. So he spent it as quickly as he possibly could, and he spent it on this expensive car and this house in Columbia. So they get back to Andrew's house, and Andrew gets a call, and this is when they find out that Seth overdosed. Last chapter of the book, and we have an overdose children. But here's the thing. Seth is an asshole and a dickhead and a homophobe, but he's sober. He's been clean for years. And Andrew says the only thing he's on right now is antidepressants. Like, there's no way that he overdosed. So his death, he dies. Like, he's dead. His death is immediately suspicious. And Andrew's like, it's not a huge loss. And it's not, because like I said, he's a homophobe and he's a shit and he's mean. But also, they know the Moryamas did this. And Neil immediately feels guilty because he knows like like I said earlier about the like Michael Jordan conspiracy, they can't get at him because he's too known. And if he died like right after joining the Foxes, people would start being like, well, what the is going on? Like, he threatens Rico on camera and then all of a sudden he's dead. What's happening? They went after somebody on his team, someone who was expendable to the team too, because Seth was like a 5th-year senior. He wasn't even really that good. Nobody even really liked him. And he had this history of drug abuse. So him dying kind of makes sense in the narrative of everything. Makes more sense than Neil randomly dying, right? So they know that Seth likely died because Neil didn't keep his mouth shut on the Kathy Ferdinand show. And Neil is incredibly guilty because of that. The other factor of it too is like, if Neil had died, it would kind of like distract from the whole Rico versus Kevin of it all, and then everything would have suddenly become about Neil. But like Seth, like I said, is kind of a non-entity, so he could just like exit pursued by a bear and nobody is going to really worry about that. Not only did they like did they like threaten Neil by proxy, but they also seriously hurt the Fox's chances during this season because, like Neil said, they have one extra player, one player for substitutions for the entire game. Renee and Andrew could like take turns because they have two goalies, but like all the other positions, they could like substitute one person. Everybody else had to be on the field. Now that Seth is dead, everyone has to be on the field throughout the entire game. And if you've ever played a game that is running focused, like soccer or lacrosse, Exie, field hockey, where you're just running up and down a field for like an hour, 2 hours at a time, that's incredibly exhausting. Like, they already don't really cooperate very well as a team, so the idea that they would be able to cooperate well as a team while also exhausting themselves, while also fighting off teams like the Breckenridge Jaguars, who have 27 people on their team, any amount of relief players, they would be like exhausted players going up against well-rested players every single game. So this like severely hurts the Fox's chances for the rest of the season. But like Andrew said earlier, like Neil can't run. Like, this was the Moryamas putting out their hit on him basically and saying, we clocked what you did to Rico on national television. You thought you got away with it scot-free, and you know now that you will never get away with doing anything to us scot-free. So Neil is like outside at the house reeling from Seth's death, and he's talking to Andrew. And this is the other moment where might be one of the greatest pieces of literature of all time. Neil said nothing. Andrew hooked his fingers in the collar of Neil's shirt and tugged just enough for Neil to feel it. I know what I'm doing. I knew what I was agreeing to when I took Kevin's side. I knew what it could cost us and how far I'd have to go. Understand? You aren't going anywhere. You're staying here. Because Neil was like, I gotta run away. And Andrew was like, I literally just promised you I would protect you. Andrew didn't let go until Neil nodded. And then he reached for Neil's hand. He took his cigarette back, put it between his lips, and pressed a warm key into Neil's empty palm. Neil lifted his hand to look at it. The hardware logo engraved in it meant it was a copy. To what, Neil didn't know, but it only took him a moment to figure it out. Andrew used his key to unlock the front door, and then took it off the ring on the porch. Now he was giving it to Neil. Get some sleep, Andrew said. We're going home tomorrow. We'll figure this out then. Andrew went around Neil to the front door. He had no sympathy or comfort for his family as they grieved Seth's unexpected death, but he would keep watch on them from the doorway until they were okay again. It was harder than it should have been for Neil to look away from him, but he finally set off down the hall. He passed the den and backtracked and curled up in one of the recliners. Despite Andrew's promises and confidence, chances were Neil was going to leave Palmetto State in a casket before spring. Neil thought he would be okay with it. He would spend his last few months as Neil Jostin, starting striker for the Palmetto State Foxes. He'd be Kevin's protege, a teenager with a bright future, and his death would be a tragedy. It sounded a lot better than dying scared and alone halfway around the world. Neil looked down at the key in his hand, he whispered, needing to hear it aloud. It was a foreign concept to him, an impossible dream. It was frightening and wonderful all at once. It set his heart racing so fast, he thought it'd drum out of his chest. Welcome home, Neil. So this is the first time this abused and terrified teenage boy has had a home in years. And it's also the first real home he's ever had, because the home that he had before was scary and full of people who were mean to him and used to beat him up. And he got his home from this evil gremlin played by Tom Glenn Carney. I finished that book and I was like, so take my money, because the first book is free and then the subsequent 2 books are like 99 cents on Kindle. And I was like, just here, take it. If I liked the cover art better, I genuinely would just like purchase the physical copies of the books, because they're so good. I love it so much. Is this the best writing I've ever encountered in a book? Not necessarily. Is it the worst? Not by a long shot. If you compare this to a Sarah J. Maas book, we need to give Nora Sakavic a Pulitzer Prize. Like, that is the difference in quality that we're dealing with here. But it is entertaining, and it keeps you locked the in. I finished the first book and I started the next book the same night because I was like, I need to know what happens next. I literally need to know what happens next. So a quick and dirty, like high level summary as we prepare for the next book, which should hopefully be out. We meet Neil Jostin, who is a teenager on the run from his mafioso father, the Butcher of Baltimore. He is in love with a sport called Exie, which is kind of like a mix between pickleball, lacrosse, and squash, and also football. Like high contact football, rugby more like, actually, I should say. So he is recruited by the Palmetto State Foxes to join their Exie team. He, despite all warnings and despite the fear that his mother attempted to beat into him throughout his entire youth, decides that he's going to join the team and moves to South Carolina. While he's in South Carolina, he trains super hard to become worthy of playing at a D1 NCAA level. Meanwhile, he's faced with the suspicion of his fellow teammate, Andrew Minyard. Andrew is the monster, the pet monster of the team's star, Kevin Day. Kevin Day is recovering from the trauma of being basically like puppy farmed at Raven Manor in West Virginia. The Ravens are a Exie team that is run by the Japanese mafia. It's so funny to think about, like, in isolation, but they are a NCAA team that is run by a branch of the Japanese mafia, like the deputy branch of the Japanese mafia, and they own all of their players, like literally own all of their players. So Kevin has been abused his entire life, and Neil is tangentially related to them because his father worked with the Japanese mafia. While facing Andrew's suspicion, he meets the merry band of misfits that is the Palmetto State Foxes. They are a group of former strippers, drug addicts, gang members, foster children. Any number of traumatized young people have come together on this team. I'm not going to go into each of the characters because I've already explained them. This is just like a quick and dirty high level summary. And they are the worst team in the district. They're incredibly scrappy though, and we are going to follow them over the next two books as they try and improve their standing. And really the end goal of this is that they crush the Ravens, because the Ravens tried to crush them after all of the trials and tribulations of his 3 months training before the Foxes season, because Neil talked spicy to the number one player on the Ravens team, Rico Moryama, on national television. Rico takes a hit out on one of Neil's teammates, Seth. Seth dies. He's killed by the Moryamas. Seth also is dating another one of Neil's teammates, so it's really devastating for like the interpersonal dynamics of the team. And it also leaves them with literally a skeleton crew. They barely have anybody to play for the entire upcoming season. So now they are a 10-man team. Every single player except one of the goalies will have to play for the entirety of all of the games that they play over the course of this season. And because the Moryamas decided that they were going to try and destroy the Foxes by killing Seth, the Foxes decide that they are going to beat the Ravens at all costs. And they're going to try. They are the underdogs, and they're going to try. This is a beautiful found family story. If you enjoy found family, this is the book for you. If you have just listened to this summary and you haven't read the series, and this summary has intrigued you enough on the series, I would still recommend that you go and check out the first book. Like I said, I think the writing of the first book is really beautiful. The second book summary is going to be coming out sometime in September, October. So you have some time to read the second book. The second book is a fast-paced, high-stakes adventure, and it basically goes, so this first book goes from like May to August. The second book goes from August through the end of December. You have time to catch up if you would like to, and if you wouldn't, you can just continue watching me explain these books. This is my favorite book series that I found in the last year, and I'm so happy to bring it to my lovely friends on YouTube. If you got this far in this video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought was the most scandalous moment in this explanation if you've never read the book before. Because sometimes I watch these videos about books that I've never read, and I'm like, they did what, where? So if you had a moment like that while you were listening to my explanation, please let me know about it in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching so far. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. That really helps me to find other people who might be interested in my channel. And if you like my face or anything that I said today, please subscribe to my channel. I put out videos about whatever I want. Usually it's pop culture topics. Sometimes it is insane mafia sports fiction just like this. So if you would like to hear more from me and my hilarious and highly informed thoughts, you can subscribe to my channel down below. But again, I'm going to stop yapping and let you all go. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate your time with me on my channel, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.